All right, people. I am.
We're gonna do a seamstress and just get a fucking button put in there.
You almost need to, or just get a brand that doesn't suck.
That's more expensive.
Yeah. On principle, I refuse to go spend money to fix something that's made shitty from the factory.
Yeah.
All right, gotta figure out the sequence here. Service overdue.
Yeah, it does that when you turn it on. There's some discrepancy in the service time because when you go into the app, it says in like 7 miles, but when you go into the bike, it says 500.
Yeah, usually that comes up a lot if the date isn't set correctly. It thinks it's like the year 2000. All right, so what am I on? I am on a brand new 2023 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS. This thing is a fucking animal. Good. The brakes are very touchy compared to the Kawasaki. Both are Brembos, but these are Stylemas with a much better, master cylinder. These brakes are touchy. The stopping power, and they probably have different pads, but they got braided lines and a different master cylinder and different pads, and actually everything about it. I have Brembos on mine, but this just ratchets it up a notch. We'll go straight. Yeah, we'll go straight. So anyway, let's see. Mode. All right, we're in sport. So this thing is got Brembo Stylemas, braided lines all around. We've got a MCS 21 master cylinder. It's an adjustable, like, piston sort of thing. I mean, you're not really adjusting the piston. The piston is what it is. I do love Triumph quick shifters. So buttery smooth. The seat on this is so comfortable. We got Öhlins up front, Öhlins out back, single-sided swing arm, state-of-the-art electronics, Pirelli Super Corsa SP3s. It is just gliding around turns. Very, very cool. Don't really know this road, so we're not going to goof around too much, but... Oh, the acceleration. Oh, this thing's fun. So much grunt. It doesn't have quite the... Well, we'll get on it and stuff. I can tell, though, by running it against Cameron, that the ZX-10 is obviously going to have a little more poke up top and stuff. But, man, in the mid-range, this thing just has so much instant grunt. And I'll tell you, I already looked at the... I got something talking in my ear. I don't know what it is. Is Instagram video playing? I'm going to turn off my headset for a second. There we go. It's very distracting. I keep hearing voices in my head, which probably doesn't surprise a lot of people that have watched my videos. God damn, those brakes are strong. They're a bit touchy. I think maybe he's dialed them up. Well, it says it's only on the 19 mil setting, so. Just wants to wheelie, but the electronics are keeping it in check. Woo. This thing's crazy. But it's so smooth. The wind not really beat me up. I mean, I only got it up to 90, but camera did top it out at 160. So we'll do like a little mini review of this, like as a street bike. You know, how does it feel? Everything's very neutral. Your hands, your feet, everything is kind of exactly where you would want it to be for a street bike. Now, I will say, because I've had street triples and speed triples, but never the 1200. I will say the foot pegs are back a little bit. That's good for the sporty intentions of this bike, and you'll probably love it on track. There's a lot of ground clearance, but you've got it. Your knees are at a very comfortable bend. It's a wide seat. It's fairly squishy. Your weight is evenly distributed on it. You don't feel like you're sitting on a hard plank like you do on the Cowie. Despite the fact that there is no wind protection, it's not bad. It's better than the Street Fighter was. This suspension, we haven't done anything with the clickers, the sag, nothing. This is right out of the box. So I'm sure once we get it up to Kent and have it dialed in for his weight and all that stuff, it'll make it a little more plush, compliant, get it dialed in. But I mean, I feel like I could jump on this, and if we were at Road Atlanta doing a demo ride, I feel like I could go do a respectable lap or two around the track without really anything. I went into tune ECU. There are some restrictions. We tried to remove them, but when it can communicate and connect to the ECU, and I could probably reset maintenance binders, but when I tried to flash the map, it said no, wouldn't let me. So I need to do a little research. Maybe I need to update the app, or maybe they figured out a way to lock these ECUs. I know some of the newer bikes they haven't cracked them yet. But the controls feel good. The bars are in a very comfortable position. You're leaned forward a little bit, but they're fairly wide. Your wrists are nice and straight. So you're not hunched over the front, but when you want to get over the front, to dive into a turn, they're not so high and wide that they're going to be in the way. Yeah, the quick shifter's nice, no drama. And it's only going to get better as the gearbox breaks in. Oof, those brakes. Yeah, now I'll tell you one thing I really feel a difference from my old ones is the weight. It doesn't weigh what you'd think a liter bike would weigh. Now the 1050s I had an 11 and a 17, and they handled well. You dial in the suspension, they were great, they were stable. Their extra weight made it kind of more stable. This is a lot lighter. It feels like it wants to just flick in wherever you want it to go. It doesn't have that top heavy kind of weight that the older speed triples had. So good on them for that, but it also doesn't feel twitchy. It still feels planted, and wasn't sure if he was going to go ripping by me or not. But it's the dashboard's way nicer than the Street Triple was. I did not like the Street Triple RS dash. Now the newer models might be better. The ones I had, oh, just so much torque. Downshifting is totally optional. And look at that fucking color, man. Sorry for the cursing. Trying to look down enough to get the camera in there for a while without not looking at the road. That is just beautiful. It's a metallic burnt orange matte. Looks absolutely spectacular. Everything about this bike just screams quality. Yes, these are all cast. These are all cast parts, but the design and the machining they've done after the fact, it's a really well thought out, well put together product. Triumph makes a fantastic bike. I've loved all the Triumphs I had. Yeah, I had my Speed Twin blow up on the engine blew up, but you own enough bikes and ride them hard, and hey, sooner or later the law of averages says you're going to have a problem with one. But all the other ones I've had, You know, they proved to be reliable. They were well made. I didn't have parts breaking off. I mean, they're just good bikes. And this thing is just, it's very planted. It's weird. You're very comfortable. I will say the seat does slope a little more forward than I like. I'm kind of sitting on my boys. But not any more than I would be on that, really. You know, it does have you in the... You're upright and comfortable. I'm sitting almost bolt upright. If I would say that my back, you know, how much am I leaning forward? 5 degrees? 6 degrees? Not much. I'm very upright. Very neutral. But the second you want to lean into it and dive into the turn and give it a go and stuff, it's like it is set up to facilitate that. Some bikes are really comfortable, and then you go to dive in and stick a knee out, and you're trying to get into your sport bike body position, and it kind of fights against you. It's like, sir, please, I'll try my best, but I would prefer not to, right? And then other bikes are like having a pit bull after giving it like 6 Red Bulls and just on the leash pulling, let's go, let's go, let's go. And so this, I feel like it strikes a nice balance. You could ride and do some light touring on a bike like this. Yeah, the wind is on you, but it's not really beating me up. I'm aware of the wind, but it's not bothersome. It's not tiresome. You got cruise control. He's going to add heated grips. All the good stuff. I would like to see a different cowl on the front that covers just a little bit more of that, but from the cockpit it looks good. Headlights are LEDs, all the lighting is LEDs. It's going to get a new rage cycle, integrated tail light, tail tidy thing. It's got 177 horsepower at the crank, damn near 100 foot-pounds of torque, I believe. At the wheel, 148, 150. It's up where my MT-10 was after I got the ECU flashed and tuned with a pipe. So this is every bit as fast as a tuned MT-10, and that's bone stock. The MT-10 stock 165 at the crank. So this thing definitely has more grunt to it. And on a naked bike, I can't imagine wanting any more. I would not get a Street Fighter V4. It's too much power for that type of application. No wind protection, you just... This is a lot. It's probably more than you need, but it doesn't feel excessive, and it doesn't get in the way. It's not so much that you're afraid to go near it. You can get on the gas. And you've got, you know, the thing revs out to 11.5, which is for a 1200 and for a triple is actually a pretty damn high red line. So it'll rev. It is just power for days, but it doesn't feel dangerous. Or maybe that's good or bad. If it was dangerous, maybe you'd be more careful. This, I have a sense that because it is so well refined, the electronics, the whole package, it lulls you into a sense of, no, it's not that fast. And it really is. But no matter what angle you look at this bike, other than, you know, having the big giant stalk on the back, but that's all DOT shit that they have to put on there as per regulations and things. Once you clean up the ass end with a tail tidy, like, there's not an angle that this bike doesn't just look amazing from. I like that depending on what you're doing, the color of the dash changes. It goes red and angry when you're at higher RPMs, and you're gonna... It's got a good sound. For a stock exhaust. Got a great sound to it. Oh, there's a pitty. I love pitties. Pitties are such cool dogs. There he is. That's funny. Unless they're the bitey type, like Max was. He was never bitey with me, but yeah, she's telling him, shut up. But yeah, I'll say the mirrors fucking useless. They vibrate. The bike, it's not. It is a little buzzy. Like you see that mirror there is like blurry. I can tell there's cars back there, but that's really about it. Is there anything I don't like about it? Not really. I like that it just has a carbon fiber fender. It's not overdone. I'm not a big carbon fiber guy. I think I was early on with the Ducatis. I would just throw all the carbon fiber parts, and you spend 20 years ago, you end up spending like $5 grand in carbon fiber. And for what? I took 6 pounds off my bike. Oh, whatever. It's just, people do it because it's bling. It's like the new chrome. They think it makes them look blingy and baller. But I don't mind it where it makes sense. So something like a fender, it's a nice little accent. It's a focal point. It doesn't look like you're trying too hard and making everything out of carbon fiber. And to be honest, there's not much plastic to it. You got a little piece up front. You got these things down on the side. You got a little piece on the tail. And there's 2 little belly pieces. That's it. I think they did a fantastic job designing this, both aesthetically, but then mechanically. Like, this is a great motor. This is a fantastic power plant. You've got all the low-end grunt you would ever need, all the torque you would ever need, no matter what you're doing. I'm rolling along at 47 RPMs. It just tractors you out. And once you get up here above 7,500 to 11, then it's like you got the best benefits of a V-twin. You got the low down grunt, but it still revs up a bit like a V, like an inline 4. My ZX10 revs a little bit higher, 13.5 as opposed to 11.5. But everything's a trade-off. A V-twin would be a little lower, you know. You'd have all that mid-range, and then it would kind of go away up top. The triples not only have a neat snarl, they have a neat exhaust tone, but they've got a really nice usable blend for a street bike of having low down grunt, torque coming off the turns, going down the main street, you need to blip around someone and you just go and it just goes. No downshifting, no waiting for revs, just but it's still got a pretty damn strong top end hit. So I've not really gotten to ridden one of these all that much. I rode one when we went up to Brian Stokes' place to break in some, help him break in the new Triumph Fleet for I think 2023. It was a couple years ago. And I spent most of my time on Speed Twins, Rockets, Street Twins, Scrambler, a couple Tigers. Really impressed with the Tiger 1200 GT. That was a really cool bike. I picked that one because I figured it'd be fast enough. It had wind protection and heated grips. And it was 39 degrees that day. We needed it. So I didn't get to ride this because there was a recall about something with some shroud with the radiator early on when it first came out. But when we went back up a second time to help him, Cameron was thinking about buying one of these back then. This has been a 2-year journey for him. So cool to see him finally get his dream bike. So he rode this one because he was wanting to really play with it. I took it down one road real quick, but I was on it for like 6 minutes. But it's just it's just so much fun. Just I imagine with its aftermarket exhaust and a little bit of tuning. Oh, I don't know how much power's left in it. I do know that they have restricted it just a little bit up top. But I think if you uncorked it with a pipe got rid of that big bread box underneath and all that stuff, and you put a proper tune in it, I bet you'd be up in the mid 150s at the wheel. I think that's actually very realistic. It doesn't need it. It is limited to 160 miles an hour. He hit 160 and it was still pulling hard, and it just hit a wall and just held it there. You can get rid of that, I believe, with Tune ECU once we figure out what I need to do to flash this thing, but yeah, I mean, there was like no RPMs and it just wanted a wheelie right there. It just rolling along at like 3,000 RPMs. Yeah, now I will tell you, man, the wheelie control on this is amazing. Because on the old one, if I'd done that, it would have just bonk and gone, you know, vertical. Here, it's like it goes up and you feel it put it right back down. And it's hopping a little bit, but it's smooth. It's not chopping and banging the front end down, but it's definitely, when you grab a handful in first in sport mode, now track mode might even back that off a little bit more. Sport mode and track mode are both full power modes, but track mode, I believe, rider, rain, road, sport. Maybe there isn't a track mode. You got to set up rider mode to be your track mode. We'll go stay in sport. I like that you can change it on the fly. And apparently you can disable ABS on this year, on this model. I think the 25s you can't. I think at some point the regulations, maybe Euro 5 Plus, that just kicked in, they made it that said you can't disable ABS. So here for a track day, if he wants to, if he found that ABS was getting intrusive, although with an IMU, I think there's different settings for ABS. Like on the Ducati, you could keep ABS on the front, but not on the back. So if you wanted to back it in, you could. And you could use the IMU based versus just standard ABS. Again, a bunch of choices. I've not gotten into the electronics on this thing yet. Maybe we'll have Cameron come over to Dave's garage and do a little video on it, but it's comfortable, it's fast, it has presence, which is what's really cool. And I love the fact that the wheelie controls, it's just so unobtrusive. It's just, it doesn't feel like it's cutting the power and slamming it down. It's just going, just a little bit. But what it lets you do is have just maximum thrust forward without it being too obtrusive and, you know. What a lovely bike. Oh. Suspension copes with the railroad tracks pretty well. But I just love how this just wants to dance around, man. I don't even think this thing has a friggin' steering damper. Now, being its proclivity to wheelie, I think if you were to back off the traction and wheelie control, I think I would probably want some. I'm liking it. I'm doing a little vlogging and review of it. What? Doing a little vlogging and review. The wheelie control on it, and first, I'm just burying the throttle, and it just does this. Yeah. It's just maximum thrust forward, but it's not cutting or doing anything weird. It's in sport mode.
I think it automatically changes when you turn the ignition. So.
Yeah, I think rider mode you could back it off a bit. But yeah, man, I mean, this thing is just... Part of me is wondering if I got the wrong bike with the ZX-10. Would have been about the same price. But I like the ZX-10, I like the fairing. And I will only be able to ride a full-on sport bike for so long. At some point, my wrists, my neck, my back, my crack, whatever, it's going to be like no moss. So I was like, let me ride another one. But I think when I do get to a point where I'm like just not wanting that high speed, full fairing, always in a racer tuck kind of ride, I think something like this. I like the Ducati V2 a lot. I thought it was an amazing bike, but I'm not going to pay the Ducati tax anymore. You know, it's like, if you got money to burn and you want to buy the bike and just have it delivered with the aftermarket exhaust and the tune and shit, and then you just ride, I guess that's okay. But it's like, once you buy a bike that's, you know, $18,000 out the door, and then you're like, oh, I'd like a slip-on and tune. Oh, that's $3,000, sir. Really? Come on, man. I could buy an exhaust for this, tune it myself, and have like a year's worth of track days and tires for just the price of the freaking exhaust. Okay, they got the yield, so let's find a spot. Little tiny doggy. All right. I don't know if I'll be back later. Maybe I'll be back and give you some additional thoughts, but I'll be on my bike at that point, so we'll see y'all later. Hey. All right. Good. Good. If you're like a teenage boy, this would be the place to hang out. All right, what are we doing? Still doing some review. Some thoughts of that delicious Speed triple back there. What a freaking cool bike. The power is just explosive but smooth. It's controlled, but it's violent. It's a lot of things all wrapped up into one bike. It looks the shiz. It's way faster than it needs to be. It's like, is it faster than this? No. But I mean, it gets up to 160 miles an hour. It's like, how fast are you really going on a street bike? And even on a track bike. They're doing track days occasionally and stuff. It's like, how often, you know, a 600 tops out at 160. Like, if you've got a nicely set up, you know, a pipe and a tune on a 600, realistically, 160 is about all you're going to get out of it. Despite what most 600 owners think that they do 175, because they don't understand how speedo error works. But when you get down to it, if you've properly tuned and set up your 600, you should get about 160 out of it, give or take a couple miles per hour, depending on which bike and how you geared it. Well, that thing pulls, that will beat a 600 to 160. And that thing only stopped because it's got a goddamn governor on it. The ECU limits it to 160. He was accelerating hard, and then it just hit 160 and stopped pulling. That thing will eat a 600. It'll outhandle a 600 in the turns, in the mountains and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, 600 is very agile in the turns, but that thing has better brakes than most 600s. It doesn't weigh much more than most 600s. The weight difference is like 20 pounds. That is a very light bike for what it is. But it's got way more power, way better brakes, better suspension. You put two good riders, two equal skill riders, and go up to the mountains, and that thing will beat the snot out of a 600. Later, Cam. So it's a great bike. I mean, look at the damn thing. It just looks so... And imagine what it's going to look, that tail is going to look like without that big stupid license plate stock on it. It's just all hunched up and muscular. It's got that big ass engine sticking out. But at the same time, it's kind of svelte. It's an interesting design language that they've used putting that thing together. It's like classy but brutish. It's clean but a bit raw. It's a lot of different things, all wrapped up into one fantastic sounding and looking bike. The chassis on it is amazing. The suspension on it is amazing. The electronics are amazing. The sound is amazing. It's just... Triumph knows how to make a bike. And I think especially in the last 10 years, you know, for the longest time, you know, the Triumphs were... They're okay bikes, but they could be quirky and... You know, but since they came out with the Daytona 675 and then Street Triples, and they really started getting serious, and especially since they went and started becoming the engine supplier for Moto 2, for the MotoGP series, you know, what replaced the 600 series, those 765 motors, they've been using them for like 7 or 8 years now at the top level racing. I mean, it's the second highest level of racing in the world. You got the MotoGP prototype class, which is your premier class where Rossi used to race, and you got Marquez and, you know, everybody else. And right beneath that, you've got Moto 2, which is where a lot of the MotoGP premier riders come from. They cut their teeth on Moto 3 and Moto 2. Maybe some come from, you know, World Superbike or whatever, but so, I mean, so Triumph's making the motors for one of the most prestigious and highest levels of racing out there. They've learned some things along the way doing that. Honda used to make the motor. Basically, it was a modified, you know, spec engine based off the CBR 600RR, set up for racing. And Triumph won the contract, and they've managed to keep it. And it's been phenomenal for the series, because a 765cc triple is no slouch. That is no, and it's those motors, I think, in Moto 2 trim are, you know, 160 horsepower motors. Those are where leader bikes were, you know, not that long ago, 20 years ago. So Triumph's learned a lot of things, which obviously directly benefits their 765 Street Triple RS lines, but I think they've taken a lot of the motor, you know, the tuning and the technique, a lot of the, you know, whatever stuff they're learning about chassis and handling and how to really push the performance limits on a bike, and they're applying it to their other sport bikes. And so they applied that to, you know, the Speed Triple was always kind of the big lump that was based off the old 955, and over the years it would get displacement bumps to keep the power up a little bit. As emissions got tighter, they'd have to add more displacement in order to be able to meet the emissions requirements, but still have enough power to not draw power. If you just add more emissions to the existing bikes, you tend to lose power. So they came out with the 1200RR first, which I think was kind of a sales failure. It was a brilliant looking bike. It looked a lot like the MV Agusta Super Veloce, which is probably the sexiest looking bike on sale right now. And now they've got a 208 horsepower 1000cc version of it from the taken out of the F4. I mean, just you know, you want to spend $40,000 on a goddamn bike. It's crazy, but it is breathtakingly beautiful. And Triumph was like, well, we could make something like that. So they took that 1200, that new 1200 triple motor, and put it into that similar sort of steampunk, futuristic, retro kind of looking half fairinged bike, and it was breathtakingly beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. But they wanted $21,000 for it, plus tax and fees and all that other shit. $24,000. You're up well into Panigale V4 territory, you know, at the time. And it's like, or R1M, both of which of those bikes would run circles around the Triumph. And I think it just didn't sell well. I almost never see one on the road. I can think of twice I've seen a 1200RR on the road in the last 3 years. So they discontinued it because it just wasn't selling. But that Speed Triple is no joke. It's very comfortable. It's very capable. I say this is faster because, yes, the top speed on this is faster, even if his wasn't limited. This will outrun it on a long straightaway. But up to well into triple digits, it's right there. In fact, there'll be times if we're up in the mountains coming off the turns, That thing has more grunt. It's got more mid-range, it's got more torque. If I get my revs up, but then it's almost like I got too much power. Gotta be careful. So, all in all, just a beautifully executed. They've been making, I think, since 1993 or 1994. They had the old Daytona 955i, I think it was. And, you know, it was kind of the first real street fighter bike, I think. I'm trying to think if there was another one. You know, there was the Ducati. No, the Ducati Monsters, I think, came out later. So, you know, that has been their flagship model. That bike is now 40 years old, the product line, that model. And they've constantly evolved it, tweaked it, and improved it. And this new one is just really, really good. You get on it and you're like, it feels plush, it feels solid, everything clicks nice. It doesn't feel cheap. Everything is really well machined. The parts that are cast are cast, but they're cast in a very interesting way. The lines just flow. They're machined properly. The fit and finish, all the gaps are consistent. They took their time. You pay for it. It's a $17,000 or $18,000 bike. Cameron got a really good deal because it was a leftover 2023 that had just been sitting on the floor at a dealership in Missouri. So he happened to scoop it up for a really good deal. But that's an $18,000 bike. It is a premium bike. You're going to pay for that. But it's the same price as this. And while this is your typical Japanese, well executed, you know, should run forever kind of thing, the Speed Triple's the better street bike. Not even in question. This makes a good street bike with the right handlebars. And it is an absolute open road or track weapon. I mean, Johnny Ray won how many World Superbike Championships on this platform? 7 in a row or something crazy. But as a day-to-day bike and a street bike that can still be an absolute hooligan at a track day, Speed Twins, it beats this easily. The only advantage I've got over him is cheaper parts, cheaper tuning, you know, because, well, no, not even tuning, because we could tune the ECU with his. It's basically just cheaper accessories because it's Japanese. There's more of them, so there's more stuff out there. And what else? Much higher top speed. Realistically, even if he took the governor off his, you wouldn't really want to go over 160 anyway. There's a reason they limit to it, because I think the bike, a bike without a fairing that has the wind really ripping at you might cause unwanted steering input. At that speed, you might start a speed wobble. I don't think naked bikes are really safe higher than that. As opposed to something like this designed in a wind tunnel to shield the rider from as much of the wind as possible and to slice through the wind, as opposed to a naked bike having to slam its way through the wind. It's a lot more turbulent, and I think that produces instability at really high speeds. So that's where this would be faster. But I would say it's going to be interesting when we both get out on Road Atlanta. If we both got really good drive coming off of turn 7 onto the back straight, I think ultimately this will be able to pass him. But it's like, I don't know. He'll be coming off that turn in second gear. He'll have the initial lunge on me for about 4 seconds. And as soon as my revs are up, I'm going to reel him in. And I should be able to pass him but it'll probably take most of the back straight, because up to 150, he's gonna be competitive. I don't know. That'd be interesting to see. His bike, I make 30 horsepower more at the wheel than him, easily. That's considerable. My bike also weighs a little bit more, but it is more aerodynamic, so there's less drag, so that's a wash. And up top, it's in my favor. But because his bike is not geared to do 190 plus like this is, his gearing is shorter, which gives him quicker acceleration. That between that and the slightly lighter weight, I think gives him the advantage. But we'll see. I thought the ZX6R would be enough to gap him on the back straight with the Z900, but it actually wasn't. Because the 600 was only on that straight because of the hills and my weight and stuff. It was like I was only getting up into the high 140s, which his Z900 could do as well. He had much more low end grunt, much more torque. His motor was 50% bigger, so. And his peak horsepower was about the same, but he had a lot more power in the mid-range, and that was just enough for him to stay ahead of me. I could not reel him in on a 600. Now, I got him the ZX14, and I left him like he was, chained to a post. But that won't happen now. He's got enough power that I'm going to have to work for it. I'm going to have to make sure that I am on his back tire going through that turn. We'll see. But all in all, I give it a thumbs up. I mean, part of me is like, for the same amount of money, I kind of almost wish I'd gone with one of those. But my reasoning was I wanted a full fairing bike again, even if it's just for a while. At some point, I will not be able to ride a bike like this without just hating life. I'm not 25 anymore. And I'm working out and getting back in shape and stuff, but it's all that's doing is pushing off the inevitable. At some point, these bikes just aren't viable as a day. If you're just doing a track days here and there, hey, you just want to blip around town real quick. I like going on 6 to 8 to 10 hour rides. Go up, spend all day in the mountains. Go up and ride up to the Dragon. It takes 3 hours just to get to the Dragon. Then you got to ride all the roads around it. By that time, you're friggin' exhausted, and you got a 3.5 hour ride home. I'm not going to be able to do this forever. So I was like, well, maybe it's one last hurrah for this kind of bike. But what's really good about it is that there are so many good naked bikes out there, street fighters. If they bring that Honda Hornet 1000 to the States, that's going to be amazing. Speed triples, Tuonos. I think there's the GSX 1000, not the R, the regular naked. There's everybody's got leader or leader-ish naked bikes. So I won't mention KTM because who knows how much longer they'll be in business. But that Super Duke 1390R is an absolute beast. So it'll be interesting to see. But what's good is that I know that when I get to a point where this ergonomic package doesn't work for me anymore, causes too much pain or discomfort, takes away the fun. That guy's got a almost flat tire on his trailer. That's how you get a blowout. Not enough pressure, tire flexes too much, overheats, compromises the rubber, and boom. I'll hang back a little bit. But yeah, I give 2 enthusiastic thumbs up for the Speed Triple. And apparently the new one has got even more tweaks. It's got a little bit more power, 3.5 more horsepower. They did some additional things with the electronics and stuff like that, but that thing was an absolute joy to ride. It just flicked. I didn't, have the chance to really chuck it in any turns or anything, but I know what it's capable of. It's going to be sublime. You get that suspension dialed in, ride the bike a bit, get a feel for it, and then just send it, and it will reward you with miles and miles of smiles for a while. Can't think of anything else that rhymes. So there you have it. That's all we're doing for today. Quick ride review and then final thoughts on the Speed Triple 1200 RS. Absolutely amazing bike. It's more than the Street Triple RS. If you're that kind of guy that wants just a little bit more than the 765, but you don't need 208 horsepower of the V4 Street Fighter, which is idiotic. It's too much power for a naked. You can't use it. That thing generates speeds that you will not want to go on at. So I think it's right in the middle, you know, that or an MT10. If you're partial to Yamaha and you love that cross-plane engine, which I think you do, everybody does, you know, if I had to choose between the Speed Triple and the MT10, oof, that's a tough call, because they're both making 150, you know, you tune and pipe, and you're both making 150-ish at the wheel. They're both at about the upper end of what you would want a naked bike to be. I don't know, that's a tough one, because you can, for the price of the Speed Triple RS 1200, you can get the MT10 SP. And see there, now you're talking electronic Öhlins, upgraded brakes, steel braided lines. You know, you got the automatic damping where you set the, and it adjusts on the fly. Öhlins, like, ooh, that's a tough call. What would I take? The Speed Triple 1200 RS or the MT10 SP? Performance-wise, it's gonna be nothing between them. They're gonna be very close. Very, very close. The MT10, as good as the Triple sounds, the MT10 I think has the more character in the motor. Yeah, it's an inline four, but that CP4 sounds like a V4. It sounds like an Aprilia. It is an amazing power plant. It's got grunt for days, like the Aprilia, or I'm sorry, like the Triumph, but I think it's got the better sound with a pipe. I think that, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10 of how the motor sounds, you got to give an 8.5 to the Triple. It's one of the best. But the Yamaha CP4 with a pipe is a 10. There is not a better sounding bike than that, than the R1 or the MT10, in my opinion. You can get the same options. You got Öhlins on both, but the other ones, you know, you can push a button and make it soft for touring and soaking up the bumps, and then push another button and now it's ready for the track day without having to get out and play with your clickers. That's kind of cool. I don't know. That's a tough one. I'll have to ponder that some more. I think it comes down to, well, all right, well, if we go through the objectively, the motor, I prefer the motor after having ridden both of them, not having ridden the Triumph extensively or in anger. I think as far as performance goes, they're gonna be the same. They're so close that you're measuring your lap time differences by a tenth or two. It's really, you know, the average rider's not gonna notice a performance difference. The MT10, I think, revs a little higher, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it's only around 11.5 as well. I think that there's more character. As much character as Triples have, the CP4 is in a class of its own. It is a master class.